I call the Honourable Member Alfred Naira. Kia ora. Mitaki.
Mitaki, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, I rise to take a call on this estimates debates in regards to housing, and I do want to acknowledge my colleague over there, Poto Williams, who talks about the issues of Christchurch and of Canterbury. The lessons from the Canterbury earthquakes are informing our work program, which is also focused on the provision of safe, healthy and high quality homes and buildings. So, I just want to acknowledge that some of the lessons that have been learnt from that as well. But Mr Speaker, Mr Chair, I think what's important is that the housing policy is one of the greatest challenges of our time. It matters because most of our Kiwi families know that the equity in their home is their greatest asset. And it has become increasingly difficult for families to buy and own their own home. And I know that for my own self, Mr Chair, that in fact it wasn't until my late 30s with my family that we actually were able to buy a home. And I know how challenging and difficult it is, and even in these times, the difficulty of that as well. So, Mr Chair, one of the things is that that's the reason why this government has embarked on a comprehensive package of reforms that will make homes more affordable and reshape New Zealand's approach to housing as well, Mr Speaker. Mr Chair, I just want to also then talk about, so what are some of the things that we are doing in regards to those reforms? Mr Chair, one of the things that we've done is the immediate suspension of anti-dumping duties through the budget night legislation of duties of plasterboard, wire nails and reinforcing steel bars for 3 years from the 1st of July as zero concessionary tariff to be reviewed after 5 years, covering around 90% of the materials in a new home and expected to save $3,500 on the construction of a standard home. Mr Chair, what we do know is that for myself, for instance, coming from a construction background, an electrician, in fact, I could be one of the few tradespersons that are in Parliament, but one thing I do know, Mr Chair, that in constructing homes, the cost to that construction becomes quite critically important. And one of the things that I do know is that when you compare the cost, for instance, of building, and we compare it in regards to square meterage, and so the costs in New Zealand, for instance, we know around about 2,200 per square metre in comparison to Australia, which is around about 1,300. So we know if we can reduce those costs, we know the difference that can make. So hence the reason why the issue around suspending the tariffs is quite an important one, and we know the savings that can make is around $3,500 on the construction costs for homes as well. The other things that we've done is $64.3 million in new operating funding for new capital funding for social housing needs and functions for the Minister of Social Development. So the social housing sector also becomes quite critically important. We know in areas like Maraenui and Pomare, and also even over in Tamaki, even with the struggles that they've had, they're very important. Yes, I do know where they are, because I know that, for instance, in Maraenui, actually the Glen Innes housing project started off from going down there and seeing what was happening in Maraenui and the work that they had been doing in regards to engaging communities about the issues of housing. So that was really important as well. So, there are those of us that do engage in communities as well. And so what we did learn from that is the importance of engaging in communities, in particular around the social housing sector. And we know the importance of the role of the social housing sector, and so hence the reason why we've engaged with them. So here's a great project that happens in our community, and you might not know about where it is. It's in Mangere. Miss Whaitere, you might not know where it is, but Mangere, and there's a project called the Mata Nikolo project. It's a Tongan project in which is partnering with the Tongan community, and what they're doing is that they've got this partnership where they've been able to build 22 homes. So now their Tongan community have got this partnership with LifeWise, a social housing provider, along with the government, and in that partnership, $4.3 million. Yep, you can go like this, but guess what? For all the talk, here's a little bit of action that's really happening. And guess what's happening? This Tongan community are saying, for the first time, we've got a sense of participation and ownership. We're dealing with the housing issues for our community. It's a great project, making a difference. Well, it may be slow where you come from, but I tell you what, where we come from, over there in Mangere, they're absolutely celebrating it. And this is what they're saying. They're saying this: when's the next project? They're saying to this government, when's the next project so we can partnership together? We have the land, we need some opportunities, so our partnership with the social housing providers is absolutely making a difference. And see, that's the difference with this government to potentially that government over there.
Mr Chairman.
I call the honourable member Phil Twyford.
Well, sir, I came down to listen to that excellent contribution from my colleague Porter Williams, but having had to sit through Alfred Ngaro